Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Politics Today, and in this programme we shall be discussing the new evidence that has come to light regarding the murder of 3 young children in Southport, which rocked and shook the nation, and we'll be asking, does the government need to come clean over what it knew? And in this programme today I am joined by Tim Gutmann from Christian Action Against Anti-Semitism, together with Robin Benson, a Christian commentator. So guys, welcome to the programme. Robin, it's great to see you again. Please share with us your thoughts on that hideous murder of 3 little young girls at a Taylor Swift dance class in Stockport back in July, and the alleged murderer, Axel Rudakubana, is facing a trial. And this murder case shocked the nation.
Yeah, it did. It rocked. I mean, it was the major topic of the news cycle for quite a while in the summer after it happened in July. I think one of the things that sort of got lost in that, not to in any way play down the death of these 3 young girls, but actually there were 2 of the staff in the dance school were seriously injured as they were trying to defend some of the other children, and then 8 of the other children were also injured. So this guy is coming up, before the magistrates, before the courts, on multiple charges. Never mind what has come to light, which we're going to discuss in the program in the last few days, that the press have jumped on. And it's, I think the thing probably that horrifies most of us is the fact that it's children. Absolutely. That's the hardest aspect of it. Mm-hmm. What on earth got into the heart and mind of this young man that he went for children, of the age group that were taking part in this dance class? It's so hard for us to comprehend, try and wrap our heads around why someone would be so filled with whatever he was filled with, hate, whatever. We're projecting emotions onto him, but there has to be some element of that he would do something like that. It's just, it stretches our ability to comprehend how someone could treat other human beings, especially children, in such a way. Yeah, absolutely.
It's great to have you back on the programme as well, Tim. But share with us your thoughts on the announcement this week that the accused murderer of these 3 young girls in Stockport, that the Crown Prosecution Service has authorised that Axel Rudakubana, who is alleged to have carried out this horrific attack, now faces investigation under the Terrorism Act for possession of a terror manual belonging to Qaeda, and also producing a deadly poison known as ricin. And the last time we saw a ricin attack was in Tokyo around 2002 that killed 6 people on the Tokyo Underground. Just share with us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, like many people, I was shocked talking to my wife last night. A lot of people speculated. There was a reaction. Obviously, like you said, children were involved, and that hurts our soul, doesn't it, as a nation? Mm-hmm. And then to be told straight away it was a case of mental illness. Now, I remember in the past, there's been serious attacks and atrocities, and straight away the authorities, the government, say that the person involved had mental illness. And but the reaction from some in the British public, you can see they were speculating that it was Islamism involved, a migrant involved, and straight away the government shut down those guys, threw a lot of these guys in jail. But what we see coming to light now, I think that raises serious questions that we should have as the public to the government, to the authorities, like how long did they know this? Why was this kept from us? It's shocking in that regard.
No, absolutely. And Robin, according to the Sun newspaper report that's actually has written about this case, that the 18-year-old is being charged with 3 counts of murder and 10 counts of attempted murder. He's also been accused of being in possession of a bladed article, a curved kitchen knife, and it's alleged that he used these in the attack. Now, the accused Rudakubana has been charged with terrorism offences. although the police insist that they're not treating this mass stabbing as a terrorist attack. Is there much more to this investigation that you think the police and also our government are not telling us?
Well, I think the fact that it's taken 3 months for these pieces of information, A, to come out into the public domain, but also for the Crown Prosecution Service to come to this decision, I mean, it begs lots of questions. Okay, when did they discover the ricin in his home? You can't tell me that that didn't happen within the first few days of the investigation, okay?
Absolutely.
There's the issue of witnesses, okay? You have multiple witnesses to this attack, including a mixture of adults. Now, it's very difficult, it's very hard to interview young children, especially children who've been traumatized by the whole thing. But nevertheless, that it's taken 3 months for the whole process to get to the point where the Chief Constable of Merseyside made this announcement that these charges are going to be brought against this guy under the Terrorism Act and the Biological Weapons Act, and yet it's not been acknowledged that it is a terrorist attack. And that doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. And there actually was a piece, just let me quote a couple of things, from a Sky News article that I looked at, where there's one quote that says, "But for the Southport attack to be classed as terrorism, motivation would need to be established according to the police." So that's one side of the argument. But then the next paragraph says, and it's a quotation, "The matter for which Axel Rudakubana has been charged under the Terrorism Act does not require motive to be established," the Chief Constable said. Those are two contradictory statements. And I don't know why someone hasn't cottoned on to that and highlighted that. So we're being told a story, okay? And I think in this nation, we have gotten to the point, sadly, where we no longer trust many of those who are in authority over us to tell us the truth. And I think this situation, the 3-month time gap to get from point A to point B, only reinforces that level of distrust in the hearts and minds of many people.
Absolutely, and because this is a live trial, we can't actually speculate on the motives of the alleged murderer, but we can also discuss the issues outside of that affect this case in particular. So we now have the Chief Inspector of Merseyside Police talking in front of the cameras regarding the Crown's Prosecution Service wanting to charge the alleged suspect under the official Terrorism Act.
Today, the Crown Prosecution Service has authorised Axel Rudakubana, aged 18, from Lancashire, to be charged with 2 further offences. Axel Rudakubana already faces 3 charges of murder, 10 charges of attempted murder and 1 charge of possession of a knife, all relating to the incident at Hart Street on the 29th of July 2024. The 2 further offences relate to evidence obtained by Merseyside Police during searches of Axel Rudakubana's home address as part of a lengthy and complex investigation which has been ongoing since the 29th of July. The additional charges are the production of a biological toxin, namely ricin, contrary to Section 1 of the Biological Weapons Act 1974, and possession of information, namely a PDF file entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual, likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing to commit an act of terrorism, contrary to Section 58 of the Terrorism Act 2000. Rudakubana will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court by video link tomorrow.
So that was an update on this horrific case that's absolutely shocked the nation to its core. Tim, I just want to quote, because I think in this programme, because there is an active court case going on and anything we say could prejudice a trial, so we have to be very careful as broadcasters in this programme. And that's why I'm using a lot of quotes from a lot of journalists and other people who've actually written about this case. So we see that Alison Pearson's writing in the Daily Telegraph, has written the following. He said, police must surely have discovered what appeared to be ricin at Rudakubana's home quite rapidly, and presumably informed the Home Secretary. Why was that important information not made public? Yvette Cooper, who's our Home Secretary, do you think that the public has not been properly informed by our government on what has been one of the most hideous crimes committed in British history?
Yeah, absolutely. Aside from the court case and the alleged murderer, this highlights something really important. You said yourself, a lot of people are losing trust in the government and the authority. This is information that the public should know, especially when it's such a, like you said, horrific attack, a horrific incident that actually affected a lot of people. It feels like, speaking personally, it feels like if it comes out that the government knew straight away and those in authority, that we're being gaslit, that they're withholding information, managing what we should think and believe. And this is actually more indicative of states that are led by despotic regimes or police states. They're controlling and managing. But actually, what we need is the truth and the facts, and that's what is in the public's interest.
No, absolutely. And Robin, obviously don't want to speculate on the actual final outcome of the conclusion of this case, but it's important to note your thoughts on what she also wrote. This is Alison Pearson. She wrote in the Telegraph and saying this one. She says, we don't know for certain what the motives of the alleged attacker were. They will be determined at the trial. What we do know from bitter experience is that any crime which may or may not turn out to have an Islamist or jihadi component is treated with extreme defensiveness and secrecy by the police, government and security services and left-wing commentators. And she says the following pattern emerges. So A, suppression of information on the identity, ethnicity of the suspect, most likely revealed by the media. Number B, criticise perfectly understandable public speculation and anger about the alleged attacker. C, deny the attacker is related to terrorism, also deny the alleged attacker was ever on the radar of the security services. And D, once alleged attacker's identity is revealed, release sweet, angelic childhood photo, also emphasise the good character of the alleged attacker. He wanted to be an architect, he helped old ladies cross the road, and neighbours said that he was a lovely chap, etc. And don't mention any previous criminal record or negative comments. What do you make of what she said?
She's just described exactly what happened in the aftermath of, initial aftermath of the incident. And something that actually that Tim sort of highlighted in passing is that a lot of the problems, and there were major problems in this nation, there were riots, but if the government and the police had at least begun to give the public some basic information of what they understood, and some of it they must have understood pretty quickly, as we've already established, some of those riots might never happen, because the riots happened on the basis of speculation that was spread by social media. Yeah. And of course then the government comes in, with hammers, criticizing people for listening to social media. Well, the problem is actually it starts off with the government and the local authority and the police not passing on information. And I think maybe we have a problem in this nation with the definition of terror, okay? And I recognize that. But those kids were terrorized, okay?
Absolutely.
Those 8 children who survived will never be the same. And the 2 adults who stepped in to try and protect them and were seriously injured themselves, they're never going to be the same as well. So whatever this guy's motivation for what he did, he terrorized that community. He has terrorized the families. He's terrorized the families of the 3 children who died, and he's terrorized the families and all the social circles of those who survived. So in that sense, I don't care in some senses what his motivation is. He's a terrorist because he's what he's done to that community. And we'll see how the trial unfolds.
Absolutely. And Tim, on another related topic, on general Islamic terrorism in the UK. And this is this kind of failure, isn't it, of our government and our security forces to actually label a terrorist attack a terrorist attack. I mean, we see this with Israel, for example, that Hamas or Hezbollah are called gunmen or militants or groups. They are not forthcoming in identifying what it is, and it's a terrorist attack. Share with us this real failure to tackle this problem and confront it head on by calling it what it is.
Yeah, I remember being at an event with the Jewish community outside the BBC, and we were protesting this very thing of refusing to call Hamas a terrorist organisation. And I've got a very good friend who's an Iranian, and he keeps holding a Hamas are terrorist sign according to UK law, and he gets arrested a lot of the time. This whole thing of not labelling terrorism when it is terrorism, when it's proved to be terrorism, you know, when it's gone through the courts. This is, like I said, it feels like they're trying to manage the public, they're trying to control what we think. Additionally, as well, you know, I've seen it myself. We've experienced what you would call two-tier policing. I've seen them treat us. I'm a reverend, you know, and I'm not unpeaceful. I try and do everything peacefully. My signs normally say something like, as Christians, we're praying for Israel. But I've seen them treat us more harshly than they've treated the anti-Israel crowds, and it's as if they're trying to appease, or if they're worried about a reaction. Is this what they're doing by not calling terrorism terrorism? I mean, if a bird quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a duck, am I right?
You are in this case, yes. yeah. But I don't know, according to some people in power, maybe not.
Yeah.
Robin, I actually saw back a few months ago in the Israeli embassy the actual footage of the horrific October the 7th terror attacks, the biggest mass terrorist attack in Israel history. This was filmed by Hamas themselves on their body cams, as well as CCTV footage of the actual horrific terrorist event. And I can't even contemplate what I actually saw, and having visited Israel as well and seeing those sites that are devastated by Hamas is quite difficult to deal with. But one thing you notice about the Hamas terrorist attack on October the 7th is that whenever they killed an Israeli, they were always shouting Allah Akbar. Mm-hmm. And isn't there a kind of major problem that our news is kind of sanitizing terrorist attacks, not only in this country, but also around the world, and trying to take out the Islamic motivation and component to it, which means that the public are kept in the dark. We don't really understand the true threats that we're facing, but our government also and our media don't come to terms with saying that this is a threat to national security. This is a threat to our democracy, and these people are motivated by extreme Islamist ideology.
Yeah.
Share your thoughts.
I don't know what you think. I think we've passed the stage now where most of our major news outlets don't actually report the news. They report the opinions of the reporters or the editor or the editorial team on a particular news. And when it comes to Israel and its conflict with Hamas, Hezbollah and all, Uncle Tom Cobley and all, that's definitely the case. We are getting filtered reports. Filtered reports, as you've highlighted, that play down the aggression and the hatred that is at the heart of these demonstrations, these anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian demonstrations, but also the conflict that Israel is taking on at the present time. So, in some senses, the whole atmosphere of our news services has shifted, I don't know, what 5-10 years, to no longer just reporting a report, the facts of what happened. It's what the reporter thinks about it, how he or she even feels about it. That is, and of course, when you start projecting emotions and opinions, a certain percentage of the public is going to feed off that and take it on board and take it as truth. And it affects the way people look at things, as we have seen since October the 7th.
Absolutely. And Tim, share with us why we need this trial to be speeded up. I mean, currently the trial of the alleged murderer is actually due to take place on the 25th of January 2025. Surely the government can actually speed up this trial so that we can actually report on it properly, so the public are informed about his true motivations of why he committed one of the most hideous alleged attacks in British history, and whether this is linked to terrorism or not.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the facts that we are aware of and the separate charges he's facing, it's in the public interest to see, for him to go through trial, to establish his motivation and to see the link, if there is a link to terrorism. That's important public information, and by leaving it and letting it drag on like this is just will create more speculation. I know there will be a reaction amongst a lot of people as well that have already reacted. We talked about the riots. It's instead of managing us as if we're children or as if we're in a police state that's been managed, we should just be presented with the truth, and we should know the truth. And leaving it to drag on, it creates speculation. It's, you know, historically, I know it's easier to sweep something under the carpet if the public are distracted and they forget, or something else is front page news. I think we need to know sooner, and we need to know actually ASAP.
And there's also the fact that you're not taking, it's almost as if the families who've been so damaged by this don't count.
Absolutely.
They're having to wait this length of time, and what's that going to do? That's just going to open up a festering wound in their hearts and their lives all over again, as the whole thing is then dragged out into the public domain once more. I mean, there's an issue of fairness here on those who have suffered because of this.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be taken into account.
No, absolutely. I just want to quote what the Telegraph has actually reported, that Axel Rudakubana has been charged by the Crown Prosecution Service with the production of a biological toxin, contrary to Section 1 of the Biological Weapons Act 1984, and possessing a manual under Section 58 of the Terrorism Act. And this will only lead to greater speculation and give a completely different picture. I mean, particularly when this attack happened, we know that he was said that this was carried out by a Welshman. He was suffering from mental health problems, and there was no connection with terrorism at all. So again, isn't this the issue of, yes, we don't want to stir up social tension, but it's important the government actually shares with the public what it knew at the time, so that we can all get a better picture of what actually happened. And like you said, had the government been very transparent from what it knew from the early days of this political crisis, maybe we wouldn't have seen all those horrendous race riots that we saw across the country, and there was no justification for them anyway. But of course, this actually then fuels false and misleading social media reports that has inflamed public opinion and the streets, and led to social breakdown and anarchy. So again, isn't the government then responsible for the way it's handling information and the way it presents information to the public, particularly in light of probably one of the worst attacks in British history?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's something that you alluded to earlier, Tim, in your comment. We have this sticking plaster of mental illness or drug abuse, or a combination of both, is often applied to situations like this. I mean, you know, if you did the research and go back, you know, the last 5, 10, 15 years, over and over again, this solution, inverted commas, is trotted out as the problem. And yet, when people begin to really dig beneath the surface and look at the transcripts of the trials, or listen to what was actually said, it becomes clear that it was an inspired terrorist attack. And I mean, these extra charges that you've read out, there's the whole issue that that we raised earlier in the program. Why wait 3 months to bring that out into the open? And there's the contradictions in the whole business of why it's not been a terrorist attack, and yet you're using terrorist legislation to bring charges against the guy. As Tim said, it just raises the whole issue of trust and distrust on the part of those who are watching what's going on.
Absolutely. So we're down to about 2 minutes. So I've got two questions in one for you, which is not unusual for me, is it, Tim? So the first thing is, I just want to give you a kind of response by one of the Conservative leadership candidates, Robert Jenrick, who said this. He said, serious concerns about the facts have been withheld from the public, and that the government and authorities told us for months that they were not treating this as a terrorist incident, and the atrocity was of the immense public concern. The public had a right to know the truth straight away. So he's really condemned the government regarding this. And the other aspect of this one, aren't we seeing the same problem when it comes to Jew hatred, that the violent threats that the Jewish community is facing is coming from Islamic extremism? But as soon as you start to raise awareness of this, once you start to investigate this, you are then very quickly labelled Islamophobic. So any discussion on this is completely shut down in the public sphere. Just share with us how dangerous that is.
It's dangerous because we need to know the threat we face from Islamism. We need to know the scope of this threat, the size of this threat. If they're constantly sweeping things under the carpet or hiding things, what happens if you withhold truth? There's loads of room, bags of room nowadays for people on social media to invent truth, and that's what happened with the right. Some of these far right guys were saying this and saying that, but actually just present the truth, you know, and with responsible statements, and then, you know, it leaves less room for speculation and for misinformation.
And within 20 seconds, how important is it that we keep the families of Babe, who was 6, Elsie, who was 7, and 9-year-old Alice in our prayers, and the rest of those that had to experience that horrific attack?
Of course it is, and especially as there's going to be this long length of time before the trial actually comes to court. You know, and I say this wound is just festering away in these families' lives, so they need to be supported in every way possible.
So Robin and Tim, thank you so much for joining me on this complicated programme. You've done very well, thank you. And I just want to thank you for watching this programme at home. Clearly, we don't have the freedom to express exactly what we want to say in this programme regarding this horrific case, but we need to pray about it. We need to pray that our government has wisdom, that our security forces have wisdom, and that the truth is exposed. So thank you for watching this week's edition of Politics Today.